I was just about to go to sleep. And then I found that a number of users have been tweeting at me that PEGI, the ratings board for video games in Europe, has responded to the NBA 2K20 controversy. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's got to do with the fact that NBA 2K20 presents blatant gambling, casino minigames in a game that is rated for 3-year-olds and above, PEGI 3 in Europe, and in America, it's a game that's rated E for everyone, despite the fact that the ESRB stipulations state that any games with simulated gambling should be rated as teen, and any games with real gambling, which NBA 2K20 will have, should be rated adult only. So right here we're looking at what used to be the video in question, the trailer showcasing the gambling in the game while highlighting that this is a game rated PEGI 3. It's been made private by 2K because of the backlash it's garnered. Now, the American version of the trailer, labeled E for Everyone, is still up, but as unlisted. It hasn't been made private yet, but the backlash is just the same. The comments are just the same. A lot of people are criticizing the nature of the game and the rating system's inability to objectively scrutinize this game for what it is: a casino disguised as a basketball game. Since then, a lot of people have contacted PEGI, asking what the hell is going on, and same with ESRB. Now, we have yet to hear from the ESRB, but PEGI has seemingly responded. And I'll just show you again, NBA 2K19, which has similar gambling systems as NBA 2K20, PEGI 3, and then I previously talked about how Pokemon, this game that has non-monetized, very sort of low-key gambling that is just in-game gambling, simulated gambling, that's given the teen rating, the PEGI 12 rating, but NBA 2K for some reason gets a pass despite its systems being far more nefarious. So when people contacted PEGI about this, asking what the hell's going on, this is the response that PEGI provided. Now, I made sure that this wasn't some fake message, and as it turns out, multiple people got the exact same email, copied and pasted. Here's another one, another user showing their email from PEGI. Here is a user from the Reset Error Forum, same response. And I'm going to read aloud the bullshit relayed here. This is not a parody. It's going to seem like a parody, but it's not. It's legitimately what PEGI had to say about the whole issue, and it is truly mind-boggling. So their response reads as follows. We have seen the announcement trailer of NBA 2K20 and noticed the controversy it has caused. We feel it is important to carefully explain when certain content is triggering the gambling descriptor in the PEGI system, but also to show when it does not at this moment. A video game gets the gambling content descriptor if it contains moving images that encourage and or teach the use of games of chance that are carried out as a traditional means of gambling. So if you look at the Pokemon description for why it got a PEGI 12 rating, it says the game was rated PEGI 12 for moving images that encourage the use of games of chance that are played as a traditional means of gambling. And so that's kind of a similar description to the one provided here. They proceeded with this. We use a help text to clarify this in more detail. This refers to types of betting or gambling for money that is normally played or carried out in casinos, gambling halls, racetracks. This does not cover games where betting or gambling is simply part of the general storyline. Okay, what part of any of what's shown here represents storyline? How does this fit into a storyline? What does story have to do with this slot machine here? Because as far as I'm aware, In a real-life game of basketball, slot machines play absolutely no part in the gameplay experience of the sport. Same thing goes with the card packs here. This is not actually a part of real basketball. There is no story to this. It is merely a monetization system or a means to hook people into gambling through free spins of slot machines. The post continued. The game must actually teach the player how to gamble or bet and or encourage the player to want to gamble or bet for money in real life. Okay. So is that not exactly what's going on here? Look at this trailer. You see the lever being pulled. Right there, there's the lever. It's being pulled. The slot machine starts spinning. And by the end of it, 3 in a row, a reward yields. That's how an actual slot machine works. There is legitimate visual representation of an adult activity at display in this trailer. It's rather educational. And given the reaction shown here, the gleeful reaction of this guy who happened to get a lucrative reward, I would say that this trailer most certainly does encourage that people engage in this kind of activity, slot machines. Roulette. We've got another reaction right here from this guy. That seems pretty encouraging. And then, of course, the card packs, which yield players like LeBron James. That's a 1 in a million chance for this particular rare player, but of course, in this case, the odds were modified specifically for this guy so that he could fulfill his fake reaction. All of this to encourage the purchase of card packs which yield random rewards after you pay real dollars. The game must actually teach the player how to gamble or bet and or encourage the player to want to gamble or bet for money in real life. Yeah, that's all in the trailer. The email goes on. For example, this will include games that teach the player how to play card games that are usually played for money or how to play the odds in horse racing. It is important to stress that the controversial imagery played a central role in the trailer, but it may not necessarily do so in the game, which has not yet been released. At this point in time, PEGI can only comment on the trailer that has been made publicly available. If you've played NBA 2K19, you'll be quite familiar with how all the systems presented here function, from the card packs to the ball drops, the pachinko, to the slot machine, to the roulette. It's all detailed in this blog post posted on Facebook, and it works very similarly to NBA 2K19. While you can only directly pay for the packs, this is very much simulated gambling, which by itself warrants scrutiny, but then there is the real gambling that's tied to the card packs. And yet, PEGI is saying that, well, we're seeing roulette and slot machines and pachinko in the trailer, but who knows how the final game's gonna pan out? It's just the trailer. They say at this point in time, PEGI can only comment on the trailer that has been made publicly available. So from what I understand, PEGI is saying that they aren't fully aware of NBA 2K20's contents. They aren't 100% sure of everything that's in the game. And yet, they have given the game a rating, PEGI 3, as if to suggest that they've played the game, that they have looked through the ins and outs, and deemed that this game, despite not fully knowing what it ultimately entails in terms of its casino-like systems, despite not being 100% sure about everything the game has to offer, decided to stamp the game as friendly for toddlers, people of ages 3 and up. Either this is complete bullshit, or PEGI is incredibly irresponsible, and the rating sport is in dire need of an overhaul, because you should not be handing out PEGI 3 ratings to a game that you're not sure will feature content that could be considered for adults or for teens. In the case of NBA 2K20, definitely adults. There's gambling in there. Real gambling. The email concludes with this. The trailer includes imagery that is generally known from casinos, Wheel of Fortune, slot machines. Using this sort of mechanic to select an item or character or action by chance is not the same as teaching how to gamble for money in a casino. These differences currently prevent us from applying the gambling descriptor, but we are very aware that it may get too close for comfort for some people, and that is part of an internal discussion that PEGI is having for the moment. The games industry is evolving constantly and rapidly in recent years. As a rating organization, we need to ensure that these developments are reflected in our classification criteria. We do not base our decisions on the content of a single trailer, but we will properly assess how the rating system and the video games industry in general should address these concerns. We do not base our decisions on the content of a single trailer. So what the hell did you base the PEGI 3 rating on? I'm wondering, because it is definitely clear that PEGI did not play the game in its entirety, that they weren't granted access to the full scope of the game, because they seem to be saying here they're not really sure whether what's being implied by the trailer is going to be the reality of the final game. They're saying, while gambling-like elements seem central to the trailer, maybe that won't be the case in the final game. They're saying that using gambling-like systems, gambling-like imagery and audio effects that resemble stuff you'd find in casinos, stuff like Wheel of Fortune and slot machines, using this sort of mechanic to select an item or character or action by chance isn't the same as directly teaching people how to gamble. They're saying that if you use slot machines to select an item, it's all good. Okay, so then why does Pokemon get scrutinized as a game for age 12 and up for featuring virtual gambling that, while has some visual resemblances to slot machines you'd find in a casino, doesn't actually allow you to spend real money, doesn't actually allow you to cash out, doesn't really fully represent actual casino gambling, and plays an incredibly small role in the grand scheme of the whole game? Why does this game get a PEGI 12 rating while NBA 2K19 gets PEGI 3? When an NBA 2K... See, PEGI is trying to get down to technicals, to legal language or something along those lines, rather than looking at the moral implications of things. Because from an ethical standpoint, I don't think anyone can question that NBA 2K is not a game for kids. PEGI is a self-regulatory body. If they want to label NBA 2K20 as having elements that are too close to gambling to be labeled for kids or for teens, if PEGI wants to label NBA 2K20 or 2K19 as a game for adults, they can choose to do that. But they are deciding not to, off of technicalities that somehow paint Pokemon Red as a more egregious game than NBA 2K. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And that's because the intention here isn't to make sense. It's just to squirm out of having to label a game that is so monetizable as something nefarious. Because if they were to label a game with loot boxes as containing elements of gambling, that would give government organizations and legislators ammo to label loot boxes as gambling, because if the ratings boards were to label loot boxes as gambling, it would sort of be them admitting it for themselves. So what do they do instead? They try to play coy. They try to say, well, there's no gambling really found here. There's no gambling. Just because something's in the trailer doesn't mean it's going to be in the final game. You know, they say that, oh, they're aware that it's too close to come for people. Oh, we're having discussions. I don't believe that for a second. When you issue a statement like this, what that tells me is you don't really give a damn about what your job actually is. It isn't to scrutinize technicalities, to give NBA 2K a pass on proper scrutiny. Your job is to look at a game and gauge whether the game is appropriate for its intended audience. That's your job. And if this organization can sit there and say Pokemon is somehow a more mature game than the gambling-infested NBA 2K, all I can say is this organization has been corrupted to hell. No way that an organization that isn't lobbied by the games industry would look at what NBA 2K is doing and provide this ridiculously flimsy stance. With that, I'd like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.